Happy Thursday, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Market Update, where we discuss leading financial and economic developments in Europe, Asia, and North America. My name is Tony, and for those watching from the US, a very happy Thanksgiving to you all. You should be proud to live in one of the great nations of the world. Let's jump in. And first up, we begin in the UK. Yesterday, Wednesday, UK Chancellor Rachel Reeves delivered one of the most politically charged and economically consequential budgets in recent memory, unveiling £26 billion in tax increases to rebuild the UK's fiscal buffer while navigating competing pressures from financial markets, defence spending needs, Labour backbenchers demanding more welfare spending, and a country still grappling with a cost of living crisis. The day was marked by chaotic scenes in Parliament after the Office of Budget Responsibility, OBR, mistakenly uploaded an analysis online of this budget before Reeves had even reached the dispatch box, a mishap that capped weeks of unprecedented leaks and pre-budget speculation. Yet despite the disorder, the package itself landed with surprising calm in markets. Bonds rallied, sterling, the currency strengthened, and UK stocks rose, signalling investors relief that Reeves had avoided major shocks and instead rebuilt fiscal headroom to £22 billion, more than double the previous estimate. At the heart of the budget lies a significant but politically delicate decision, freezing personal income tax thresholds until 2030 through 31, a measure expected to raise £12.7 billion and drag millions more workers into higher tax bands. In what supporters have called deftness and critics have called sneakiness, Reeves avoided breaching Labour's manifesto pledges not to raise headline income tax rates, but the threshold freeze, combined with new charges on pensions, salary sacrifice schemes, and higher taxes on dividends, savings, and property income, effectively raises the UK tax burden to 38% of GDP, the highest since the aftermath of the Second World War. A new so-called mansion tax on properties worth more than £2 million, over 60% of them in London, adds further weight to the squeeze on wealthier households, with some commentators pointing out that £2 million in London is hardly a mansion. Indeed, there may well be middle-class families that have just held properties there for some time, where they've seen rather humble houses appreciate into the millions of pounds. Meanwhile, the cash ISA allowance for under 65s will be cut from £20,000 to £12,000, and national insurance will be charged on salary sacrifice pensions from 2029. While banks were spared increases, online gambling firms were not. The remote gaming duty will leap from 20% to 40% next April. Electric vehicle owners also face new costs, with a per-mile road charge coming into force from 2028. If the tax measures lean towards fiscal conservatism, Reeves balanced the scales with some of the most massive welfare changes in a decade. Chief among them is the scrapping of the two-child benefit cap, a £3 billion move expected to lift nearly 500,000 children out of poverty. The national living wage will increase by 4.1%, younger workers by 8.5%, and state pensions by 4.8%. Rail fares will be frozen, while average household energy bills will fall by around £150 due to the removal of green levies. These steps won praise from Labour's left, including MPs who had rebelled over welfare cuts earlier this year. But the OBR warned that welfare spending has surged by £16 billion compared with March forecasts, driven by rising caseloads, earlier government U-turns, and the benefit cap decision. Local government borrowing, education support for children with special needs, and departmental budgets, particularly for the National Health Service, asylum system, and digital ID programs, were all revised upward. Yet despite the spending increases, the OBR judged the overall package to have, quote, no significant impact on output by 2030, end quote, reflecting lower productivity growth. The clearest winners are low-income families, pensioners, and young people. High street retailers with smaller properties benefit from permanently lower business rates, while oil and gas drillers secured permission to expand into adjacent fields. Losers include better-paid workers, savers, landlords, and London homeowners, along with graduates facing frozen loan repayment thresholds. Online casinos and EV owners also absorbed direct hits. With all these tax increases, what is the fiscal result of all this? In short, better than before, but still not great. Borrowing as a share of GDP is projected to fall from 5.1% last year to 4.5% this year, and then decline to 1.9% of GDP in 2030 through 31. Public sector net debt is forecast to rise from 95% of GDP this year to a peak of 97% of GDP in 2028 through 29. But these assume no global shocks, an assumption which, in our current era, is difficult to make. For now, though, despite the chaos on the day of delivery, markets are calm. Labour's left is placated, and the Chancellor has brought herself fiscal space. Whether this budget can deliver the growth Britain desperately needs, however, remains a far more uncertain question. Next up, a barrage of downbeat economic data released just before Thanksgiving has heightened concerns over the health of the world's largest economy, intensifying the political and policy pressure facing the Trump administration. New Pew research shows that roughly 3/4 of Americans now view the economy as only fair or poor, with a majority blaming the president's policies for worsening conditions. Among those most pessimistic, rising prices top the list of grievances. Fresh signs of strain emerged Tuesday as retail sales and consumer confidence figures pointed to a population reining in spending amid an affordability crisis rattling Washington. Retail sales rose just 0.2% in September to $733.3 billion, sharply undershooting Wall Street's expectations and marking a notable slowdown after months of stronger gains. Meanwhile, the Confidence Board's Consumer Confidence Index fell to 88.7 in November from 95.5 the month before, its second lowest reading in 5 years. Analysts noted the dip echoes the level recorded in April when the US escalated its global trade war. Quote, American consumers seem to be losing faith in the economy's resilience, end quote, said Eswar Prasad of Cornell University, adding, quote, rising prices, concern about employment and housing affordability are clearly taking a toll, end quote. The pressures are most acute for lower-income households, squeezed by higher housing, grocery, and healthcare costs, while wealthy Americans benefit from a buoyant stock market. Labour market indicators also paint a deteriorating picture. Unemployment hit a 4-year high of 4.4% in September, while hiring has remained subdued. Some economists warn that Trump's tariffs are now feeding directly into consumer prices, further weighing on real incomes. Supporters of the president's policies continue to point out that this is to be expected when undergoing large structural shifts, short-term pain, but for longer-term sustainable growth. With the Federal Reserve set to meet in December, policymakers are debating whether to deliver a third rate cut this year. Their assessment has been complicated by last month's record government shutdown, which delayed key economic reports. But with consumer sentiment and labour conditions sliding, economists say the urgency of the slowdown is becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. If you're getting some value from today's episode and you want to continue to be on top of updates like these, consider subscribing to Market Update at the bell notification icon and you will be. It's also a tremendous help if you're getting some value to just hit that like button. Next up and finally for today, Hong Kong is reeling after its worst residential fire in more than half a century left at least 44 people dead and hundreds unaccounted for, raising urgent questions about building safety in one of the world's most densely populated cities. The blaze, which erupted around 3 p.m. Wednesday local time, engulfed the 8-tower Wang Fuk estate in northern Hong Kong after igniting bamboo, scaffolding, fueled by wooden poles, protective netting, and flammable sheets. The fire spread rapidly from building to building, turning the aging high-rise estate into an inferno. Rescue teams worked through the night as explosions echoed from the upper floors of the 31-story towers, where water jets struggled to reach. By early Thursday, Chief Executive John Lee said 279 residents remained missing. Police have arrested 2 company directors and a consultant on suspicion of manslaughter as part of a widening criminal investigation. The Security Secretary, Chris Tung, said the scaffolding materials, quote, burned far more intensely and spread much faster than compliant materials normally would, end quote. Potential evidence of long-standing concerns about the city's construction practices. In Beijing, General Secretary Xi Jinping called for, quote, all-out efforts, end quote, to reduce casualties and directed other local governments to assist the rescue mission. The Wang Fuk estate, built in the 1980s as subsidized housing, is home to nearly 5,000 residents. more than a third of whom are over 65. The complex has been undergoing renovations, with many residents balking at the high cost. The tragedy echoes London's 2017 Grenfell Tower fire, which exposed systemic failures in building regulation. In Hong Kong, residents reported that fire alarms did not go off, with some only alerted by security guards knocking on doors. The blaze is likely to intensify calls to phase out bamboo scaffolding, still widely used across the city. As rescue efforts continue into Thursday evening, Hong Kong faces a moment of reckoning over aging buildings, fire safety standards, and the vulnerability of high-rise communities. Okay, that is today's episode of Market Update. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. Have a good Thursday, and I hope to see you for this week's final episode, which will either be tomorrow or on Saturday.